Anthony Hernandez had a rough start to his UFC career, losing to Marcus Perez and Kevin Holland. In an organization as competitive as the UFC, you can't afford to lose 3 consecutive fights, and at times 2, because it puts you at risk of getting cut. So Anthony had a point to prove when he faced Rodolfo Vieira. For those of you who don't know, Rodolfo Vieira has won multiple championships in one of the biggest and most competitive BJJ organizations in the world, IBJJF. Going into the fight, the narrative was that Anthony Hernandez has to keep things on the feet if he wants to have a chance at beating Rodolfo. And that's what the former double champion Daniel Cormier himself thought. Oh, but they were wrong. Anthony not only dominated Rodolfo on the ground with strikes, but submitted him via guillotine in the second round. It was at this point where we had to start taking this guy seriously. And I think he separates himself from the rest of the middleweight division because he has a good understanding of grappling, similar to guys like Bo Nickel and Khamzat Chimaev. And he doesn't just rely on mere strength, but rather a good understanding of positioning. In grappling, the fighter that's going to win is the one that knows what maneuvers to make and when to make them, even when he's the smaller opponent. You know how in striking they say precision beats power and timing beats speed? You could apply that same principle to grappling. Because we saw in Izzy's fight against Pereira, the second one that is, on paper they are more or less equally technical, but Alex Pereira has the edge in power, yet Izzy was still able to win. Why? Because he relied on precision and timing and not just strength. If he relied on strength alone, he was going to get outpowered by Alex Pereira's gifted hands from God. Even Dustin Poirier said it himself. In an interview, he was asked to compare Khabib's strength to the rest of the guys that he faced. And he said Khabib wasn't necessarily stronger than the guys he faced, but rather he had a better understanding of positioning. Because this is the highest level of mixed martial arts. It's not like any of those guys aren't strong. They're all training hard. They're all pushing their body to its limit. So what's going to separate one fighter from another? It's efficiency. And Khabib is one of the most efficient grapplers, one of the most dominant grapplers the UFC has ever seen. And only a few have been able to replicate what he's doing. And I think Anthony Hernandez is one of them. I would say Anthony Hernandez's style is closer to someone like Kobe Covington or Merab than it is to Khabib. But there are some shades of Khabib in Anthony Hernandez's style because of the chain wrestling and trying to grapple against the cage. Because that's normally how Anthony gets a lot of his takedowns. He gets his opponents to the cage, takes them down, submits them, or lands some grounded strikes. And boy, oh boy, this man has some vicious ground and pound. We saw in his fight against Michel Pereira, there was more than one 10-8 round. If I'm correct, at least 3 of the rounds were 10-8. Anytime more than one round is 10-8, it means the fighter was more than dominated. He did the same thing to Shabazian. In the third round, Shabazian was pretty gassed out. Anthony lands a head kick, takes him down against the cage, lands some grounded strikes till the ref had to stop the fight. And something that's reoccurring in a lot of his fights is his opponents get gassed out. Rodolfo was gassed out, Shabazian was gassed out, Michel Pereira. But a lot of people say Michel has bad cardio in general, which meant that Anthony was a nightmare matchup for him because in a 5-round fight, you don't want to be going up against Anthony Hernandez. I guess one thing that helps him is that he doesn't have fast twitch muscles. He has slow twitch muscles, which means he can probably output more than a lot of his counterparts like Michel Pereira. Michel is a pretty big guy and the muscles weigh you down, man. They make for a lot of powerful strikes, but when it comes to longevity, a lot of these big guys, these bodybuilder looking guys, they don't tend to do well in the octagon, and that fight was a testament to that. Lastly, I would like to talk about his striking. Anthony Hernandez has some pretty decent striking. I wouldn't say he's the best offensively, but defensively he can stand with pretty much anyone in the top 15. I think if he were to fight Izzy, right, he wouldn't be able to really pop off on Izzy, but he would be able to just be defensively good enough to a point where he can threaten a takedown, because that's what it is with strikers, you know. All you have to do is take it down to the mat where they're not comfortable, and the way that you do that is to pressure them. You just have to be decent when it comes to offensive striking. Defensively is where you need to really pay attention because you can get caught. This is Izzy. Izzy doesn't necessarily hit extraordinarily hard, but he is pretty precise. So the last thing you want to do is just go in recklessly, you'll end up getting knocked out. And that's exactly what he did to Alex Pereira, of all people. So with Anthony Hernandez, what he does is he pressures his opponents. He keeps his hands up, especially when he's going up against dangerous strikers like Roman Kopylov. We saw what Roman did to Claudio. Anthony Hernandez was fully aware of that, so he kept his hands up. And he had his way with Roman. He took him down and submitted him via rear naked choke. If he were to fight Izzy, I think he would do the exact same thing. I think we might see a first round submission. And I think we're at a point where that fight can actually make sense because Izzy's about to fight Imavov, right? I think Izzy's going to beat Imavov, but let's just say Izzy loses. He would probably fight, I don't know who you'd fight next, but Anthony Hernandez would be in the picture. I think Anthony is 2 to 3 fights away from a title shot. I think he's 3 fights because I know the UFC is a bit picky with who they give championship fights to. So I think he was probably 3 fights away from a title fight. And if Izzy was to lose 1 fight and Anthony was to win 2 or 1, I think he would fight Izzy, or at least there's a chance he would. And man, if I'm being honest, I see Anthony winning that fight. I don't know, guys. You guys let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think I'm glazing the guy, or do you think I'm onto something? Let me know. Thank you.